I'd like to introduce Lelia McDonald, who's our presenter today. Hi, Lelia, and welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about being a skilled volunteer. A professional volunteer is a volunteer who has specific expertise to fill a need that a nonprofit has. We're going to talk about where to find opportunities to become a professional volunteer, review what's in it for you and why you need to tell everyone about that, a brief orientation to the nonprofit industry, why it's your job to diagnose and triage the issue your nonprofit has. It's not really their job to self-diagnose, when to make a proposal, and what are the signals that tell you to walk away. For the past 4 years, I have been a professional volunteer. I volunteer through Mass Consulting, which is a pro bono consulting firm for nonprofits in Toronto. We are a charity. Our mission is to build capacity in the nonprofit sector. There are about 50 of us, professional volunteers, and I am the leader of the marketing practice area. Everything that I'm going to say today is on my website. It's in the drop-down box called Volunteer Orientation, right here. As well, if you want to be a professional volunteer in the marketing area, my website has other information and videos that contain everything that I have done for clients and what I have learned from them. Unlike paid consultants who want to be paid for their family jewels, I take the approach of open source code for marketing. Because I'm paid in ways other than money, I am willing to share my intellectual property. Let's begin. A professional volunteer is a volunteer who offers specific expertise in HR, accounting, strategy, and who helps the management of the nonprofit, not so much its operations. So what's the difference between a volunteer and a professional volunteer? Check out the Charity Village volunteer listings. Here are some sample volunteer descriptions. Typically, these descriptions are specific and are related to the programs the nonprofit offers to their clients. Occasionally, you can find volunteer descriptions like these. These descriptions are vague, they require people with specific expertise, and they are related to the management of the nonprofit. Another difference is in the need. For every 25 listings for volunteers, you'll maybe find one request for a professional volunteer. I'm going to pause right here and answer two questions. We've already got two questions from viewers, and they relate to this slide. One question is, what is the best way to approach nonprofits to offer services? The best way is volunteer listings is the most efficient use of your time. You could try networking. I would not recommend cold calling nonprofits. Before I started volunteering with Mass for 2 years, I tried to find opportunities on my own, and it was really hard. Networking worked, but really only because I was at the right place at the right time. I tried identifying nonprofits and cold calling them that interest me, and it just didn't work. If you think about it from the nonprofit's point of view, once they identify that they have a gap, they work hard to fill that gap, either through volunteer listings or networking. Once the gap is done, they move on to the next gap, which will require different expertise. So the window of opportunity is short for any one particular nonprofit about any one particular gap. So a random approach is probably not going to be a good use of your time. The second question is, are there specific skills that are more in demand for skilled volunteers? Great question. I don't know the official answer to that question. However, I can give you a partial answer, and I'm going to use Mass as the example. Last year, we completed over 200 projects for nonprofit clients. Our clients are mostly in Toronto, mostly small to mid-size, and they cover all causes. About 50% of our business is in the governance and strategy area. So those volunteers are kept pretty busy. The other half of our business is evenly split between HR, fundraising, marketing, and meeting facilitation is actually a big one too. So perhaps Mass results, our results, are indicative of the broader need. That leads to my next slide is, let's talk about you. What areas do you want to volunteer in?
Great. And so we're just putting a poll up on your screen, everyone. So you should see that there and be able to just go in and vote on which areas you would like to volunteer. So we've got human resources, marketing, fundraising, strategy, and accounting. So it's looking like we've got almost half of you voted there. Lilia, it's quite an even split actually. We're looking at about 40% strategy, 25% fundraising, 20% HR, and 15% marketing. And a few of you there were sitting at 8% for accounting.
That's great.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, one way you can be a professional volunteer is as a, it's not going forward. There, sorry, glitch there.
There we go. I can see it, Lilia.
Is as a board member. Boards of directors need to select members with a mixture of skill sets that cover all areas. For example, a board member with expertise in HR would attend all monthly board meetings and lead all monthly meetings for the HR subcommittee. They would need to be an expert in HR, on all the issues in HR, and how to address them. So being a board member is a great way to learn about areas outside of your expertise. If you want to hone your skills within your area of expertise, you might want to consider just being a member of the subcommittee. You'll learn how to apply your skills in a real setting, and you don't have to attend all the board meetings. If you don't want to commit to being a board member, which can be a long-term commitment, you may want to volunteer on a one-time project. This is what I do. Here you act more like a consultant, and consulting skills and the concrete results I get from a one-time project look great on a resume and give a real sense of accomplishment. So for those respondents in the poll who picked marketing, the 16% of you, as their area, let's pause and let me show you what a typical one-time marketing project looks like for me. For marketing, there is a difference between small and large nonprofits. Small nonprofits typically want a rebrand, which takes about 2 months. I clarify their messages and create a new website. Then I use that website to create all other promotional items. Then I give tutorials so my clients can do their own edits in the future. As a comparison, paid consultants would charge $3,000 to $10,000 and use technology not available to clients who then have to return to pay for updates. Large nonprofits have more complex needs and they take a lot longer. Typically, small nonprofits need help with everything. Large nonprofits are doing the basics right, but they want to work smarter. And so what's in it for me? For small nonprofits, I enjoy the intellectual challenge of decluttering an old website into clear and concise messages, and I get a sense of accomplishment from a website and a brochure that I made. Also, I have had to teach myself new skills in WordPress and PowerPoint. For large nonprofits, it's more about the intellectual challenge of crunching their numbers, which is more analytical, and they require more face time. So I get more of a human connection in that way. What's in it for you? You need to be honest with yourself, and you need to tell your nonprofit why you want to help them. This is so important. Being open with your nonprofit allows them to trust you. In order for them to feel comfortable working with you, there must be an exchange for your service. Price is a signal. People expect to get what they pay for. So, as a volunteer, how do you replace price? Okay, tell them what you need in return. Tell them how they can pay you in ways other than money. Next, we're going to review several motivators. As I'm talking, think about which one motivator is most important to you, because we're going to have another poll in the end. First, do you need to build your resume with concrete examples? Do you want to say something like, my project increased revenues by 10%? Or do you need a reference? Do you want to find a mentor? Typically, to learn a new industry, you need to change jobs. Volunteering is a way to learn the nonprofit industry without jeopardizing your day job. Some professions, like marketing, value employees with experience in multiple industries. Being an employee is really different from being a consultant, and a professional volunteer is more like a consultant, and those are very valuable skills to have. Do you want to learn new skills? For example, I had to learn WordPress to create websites and learn the intricacies of PowerPoint to make brochures. Are you getting bored? Do you want to give back and share the expertise you have learned over your career? Do you want to reconnect with your education because your career path recently has gone in a different direction? Do you want to see the difference you can make? If your day job is in a large organization, it is so hard to measure the impact one person has. Do you want to feel needed and important by demonstrating your corporate worth? Do you want to connect with a cause because of personal or family reasons? Do you want to reach outside your existing network, connect with your neighbors, or meet new people with the same interests as you, or just get a sense of camaraderie? Do you want to give back but fear stuffing envelopes? So what's in it for you? Please pick one.
Great. So everyone, you should see another poll popped up on your screen here. We've got build your career, stretch intellectually, connect with a cause, meet new people, or perhaps there's a reason there that we don't have up on the screen. So just pick other. And looks like most of you have voted, so I'm actually just going to close and share this poll with everyone so that you can all see each other's answers here. So we've got about 40% at build your career, about 20% stretch intellectually, 27% connect with a cause, 10% meet new people, and 5% other. Thanks, everybody. I'll turn it back over to Lilia now.
Great, thanks. Okay, well, whatever your answer is, it's really important to be honest and tell everyone about it so that they can feel comfortable about you. So let's move on now and find out what's in it for you. Sorry, what's in it for your nonprofit. Well, you have expertise that they need for free. You do the project and then you leave. You don't need to nurture you like an employee, and they don't need to find you something else to do to keep you busy. You have an outside perspective. You aren't caught up in the day-to-day crises, so it's easier for you to see the big picture. You aren't tied to the history of the nonprofit and the way things used to be. And you can say the uncomfortable facts that their employees can't say. On many occasions, employees tell me what they want me to say to their bosses because they feel that their bosses will listen to me more than them. Obviously, nonprofits will be looking for your expertise, but it'll be hard for them to judge. So they may look for proof from your past experiences. They will want someone who actually asks questions and doesn't jump in with answers. Someone who focuses on their needs of the nonprofit rather than bragging about their own accomplishments. Someone who is honest but in a nice way. And someone who uses straightforward language, no jargon, no buzzwords, no acronym. Someone who doesn't use big words just to make themselves look impressive. And that is going to be hard for some people that are used to a lingo in their day job, and then at night when they volunteer, they have to change their language. And someone who will help them think things through, help figure out the answer and not present them with an answer, and just help them set priorities. So let's pause and review the agenda. You have found an opportunity as a professional volunteer. You've explained what's in it for you. Before you can start adding value, you need to get oriented. Your nonprofit will likely orient you on their work. If you are lucky, they will orient you about their cause. You are probably not going to get oriented on the not-for-profit industry, not the facts and not the soft stuff, the stuff that everyone does and no one talks about. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to orient you so that you can be ready to start sooner. Let's start with the cause that your nonprofit supports. Okay, this chart's going to get busy, but it's so helpful. I love this chart. The left column shows the causes that are the ones that are typically recognized in the not-for-profit industry. The column of orange bars shows the number of nonprofits within each cause. So the category with the most nonprofits is sports and rec. Look down at the 9th category called health. Health includes the cancer charities, the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Even though they are more prominent, they are actually fewer in number. Overall, most nonprofits are small. 95% of nonprofits only generate 15% of the revenue in the industry. So you do the math. The largest 5% of nonprofits generate 85% of the revenue in the industry. There are a ton of tiny nonprofits. Probably any volunteering you do as a professional volunteer will be with the small nonprofits who really need your help. Now let's look at the blue bars. They show the number of donors. And what's interesting here is there is no correlation between the orange bars and the blue bars. Even though there are lots of sports and recs nonprofits, they don't get many donors. In contrast, look at the health category. Even though there are fewer nonprofits, boy, they get a ton of donors. Now let's look at the red bars, which is the dollars. The red bar is where the money goes. Again, no correlation. The biggest blue bar is in the health cause, but the revenue column in red, health is a far second place, and the orange bars are even smaller. Except for religious nonprofits, which is the second row, all nonprofits have more donors, blue bars, than red bars. And they have more supporters than money, in other words. This chart tells us that the nonprofit industry, there is no correlation between the number of nonprofits, the number of donors, and where the money goes. So what does this chart mean for your nonprofit that you're volunteering for? Probably your nonprofit has more donors than donations. Your nonprofit may already have a large donor database, so you can access to ask for more donations rather than trying to acquire new donors who don't know them. What is the difference between a charity and a nonprofit? Charities are a subset of nonprofits. There are 170,000 nonprofits in Canada. They are all exempt from tax, have no shareholders, and operate for purposes other than profit. About 50% of nonprofits stay as nonprofits because they are funded by members, for example, sports clubs or cottage associations. The revenue they get is sufficient to fund their operations. The other 50% of nonprofits apply for a charitable designation from the Canada Revenue Agency. Why? So they can give tax receipts. This will encourage more donors to give to them. So these are the nonprofits who, these ones that become charities, are those who need donations to fund their operations. For example, a homeless shelter. Otherwise, they would not have enough revenue to fulfill their mission. Nonprofits have a life cycle. You can Google several versions of a life cycle. Here's just one version. From startup, where there is crazy energy, to a bit more formal, to growing. These are the big, well-known nonprofits. And finally, to stagnating. There are two things you need to know about this slide. Where is your nonprofit on this scale? And are they transitioning between stages? What I have found is that if a nonprofit is staying within one stage, your project can be worked on in isolation. But if the nonprofit is transitioning between stages, there's going to be a whole lot more going on in other practice areas, more than just your project. For example, a nonprofit that is transitioning between stages needs to work on their more foundational needs like strategy and governance and HR, and resolve them before they work on marketing and fundraising issues. There are two bottom lines. Some employees that you'll be working with will be persuaded by suggestions that will improve the financial efficiency of the nonprofit. Other employees will be motivated by the impact on the cause. Both are important. Before making suggestions to anyone, be prepared to stress the benefits to whichever bottom line your listener is most attracted to. In the for-profit industry, profitability is the way corporations measure success, and that works for employees and for shareholders. In the not-for-profit sector, different audiences have different metrics. Is success measured by winning or having everyone play? Amount of money raised or hours being useful? Meals served or lives changed? Expect lively discussions about how to measure success. There is no clear answer to this. Expect a culture of consensus building and getting buy-in from a wide range of employees. For example, the board may be involved in decisions about operations. This slows down the speed of decision making compared to the hierarchy in a for-profit enterprise. Other nonprofits within the same cause will be considered partners with differing mandates or different territories. They will not be considered competitors, despite the fact that they are approaching the same donors. They don't compete over clients, but they do compete over donors. Here's an analogy. In a for-profit corporation, internal departments don't consider themselves as competitors because they have the same goals, and they actually do compete with each other, though, for a finite budget. Similarly, nonprofits think of each other as internal departments within the same cause, with the same goals, but they are competing with each other for a finite pool of donations. So when you're working with a nonprofit, don't feel that you need to avoid this concept. It is really important to understand how your nonprofit is unique. Just during your conversations, avoid using the term competitors because people get really emotional. Instead, use the term alternate providers. You need to earn credibility. Under promise and over deliver. Anyone can call themselves a marketer. Anyone can say they have HR experience. Everyone thinks they are an expert at strategy. In the past, your nonprofit may have been disappointed with promises from previous volunteers, which can make them hesitant about you. To staff in a nonprofit, people like you, an expert in the for-profit sector, can be intimidating or perhaps irritating. This is a typical response in consulting. As a marketer, I expect resistance from fundraising staff because they may feel threatened by me making their results more transparent. My colleagues at Mass in the strategy practice area experience resistance from senior management who feel that external advice is a sign of their own weakness. My colleagues at Mass in the governance practice area experience resistance from board chairs and founders who like the way things have been done in the past and don't want to change. It is almost guaranteed you will experience resistance from someone somewhere in the nonprofit. Don't take it personally. Remember that you may not understand what it means to be brought up with a different set of social norms, or to have lived below the poverty line your whole life, or what it's like to live with someone who needs constant care because of a medical diagnosis. Any analogies you use to explain things based on your own experiences may be completely irrelevant to your nonprofit. Expect to learn from the nonprofit sector. For example, you may learn how to motivate employees without using salary and benefits as a motivator. You can practice by learning how to motivate other volunteers. Helping others can give you a sense of vitality and improve your mood like a runner's high. Quick time check here. You found your opportunity. You've told everyone. You've been oriented. Are you ready for the next step? No. Do not make a commitment yet. And this is where I make a mistake all the time. I resist the temptation to jump right in. Don't make any promises. You are still checking things out. Ask lots of questions and more questions and more questions, and then you find the project ends up much different from what you initially thought. What a nonprofit asks for is not necessarily what they need. Like a doctor treating a patient with localized pain, the pain may be only an excuse and the real issue is more serious or more embarrassing. It is your job as the expert to dig a little deeper and find the real problems. Your nonprofit needs someone with specific expertise to diagnose their challenges and triage the most important. At Mass, for about 1/3 of my clients, I do end up delivering what they originally asked for, so they self-diagnosed correctly. They're the minority. For easily 2/3 of my clients, I end up uncovering way more issues than what they initially asked me for. Here are some examples. Clients express their needs in different ways, and they usually describe it in terms of a solution. We need help facilitating a half-day board meeting. But it's rarely expressed in terms of the problem that needs solving, and we need to rethink our mission in light of declining membership or funding cuts. So perhaps staff need to do more thinking before calling a big board session. They may ask for help training their ED to be a spokesperson without realizing that the messages on their website are unclear. The website needs to be the foundation of a brand, and if it's not clear and concise, well, no wonder the ED isn't either. First, they need a new website. Or perhaps your nonprofit needs more donations and they jump to the conclusion that they need more new donors. After you investigate, you may find they don't need new donors, they just need to renew the donors they've already got. You've done your diagnosis, you've triaged the priorities, summarize it in a proposal. List what needs to be done and the benefits, which are always save money, save time, increase profile, clarify messages, increase employee happiness, whatever it is. The costs and the time. Now that's time commitment from you, time commitment from other volunteers, and the time commitment from staff. Probably time will be the biggest cost. The project completion date, and then this is where you remind them what's in it for you. Show how this proposal helps them and helps you. Now you wait. Despite how you've convinced yourself you have found the solution to your nonprofit's problems, allow your nonprofit to say no. They may now realize that they have other priorities. Remember that earlier slide on the life cycle? If the nonprofit is transitioning between stages in the life cycle, there will be many other demands on their time, or they may disagree with your analysis. Or the nonprofit may have second thoughts about you. It is nearly impossible for a nonprofit to fire a volunteer, and it is so awkward to manage a volunteer who means well but is not adding value. So instead, nonprofit staff will not overtly disagree with you, but they will withdraw. Perhaps the project is just too overwhelming. If it is, divide it up into clear stages. This is important for you too. Otherwise, this project will get bogged down and you won't get what you need. Maybe the chemistry is wrong. If so, walk away now before it gets started. At least you can feel good that you have given them a plan that they can implement. You've shown them what they need to do. Or you don't have the resources or the knowledge or the time to commit. Admit it now. Let me give you a very common example in the marketing area. For example, there are two sides to marketing, the creative side and the analytical side. Some marketers feel more comfortable on the creative side, like writing brochures and designing websites. But what if you discover after your diagnosis that your nonprofit actually needs help on the analytical side? They need help crunching their numbers on their revenue or calculating the churn of their donor portfolio. That's all number crunching. If you don't feel comfortable crunching numbers, admit it now and find another volunteer to join you. A staff person has to act as the keeper of the project and its timetable. If this doesn't happen, it's a strong signal to walk away. So that's it. Thanks for listening and have fun being a professional volunteer. Again, everything I said is on my website, so check it out. Any questions?
Fantastic, Lilia. We do have some questions. Such a great presentation and lots of interest in this concept of skilled volunteering. So this is great. Let's start off with a question that came in early. We've talked a lot here about the fantastic things about being a skilled volunteer or a professional volunteer. What do you not like about it? Is there anything?
Yeah. Okay. Uh, Compared to the for-profit world, that slow pace really does drive me crazy sometimes. And remember, in an earlier slide, I said that the culture of consensus building means that the pace will be slow in that, and that's there. But really, a big reason why it's so slow is that the staff of small to mid-sized nonprofits are stretched. They don't have the time. And even though at the beginning of the project I say, I'm willing to volunteer 30 hours, but that means I need 15 hours from your staff. The staff don't even have 15 hours to give me. And that can be, not only does it slow it down, but it sort of frustrates me because, I can't get what I need to do a good job. So that's it. And the other thing is I guess this is more relevant to the marketing area, but it's nonprofits who don't fix their more foundational needs first before talking to me. It's from a marketing point of view, when I look at all my clients, their marketing challenges are identical and the marketing deliverables are identical. So why is it that some projects just proceed really smoothly and other projects just explode? And it's taken me 4 years, but I think I finally figured it out that it has nothing actually to do with marketing. It's because there's other things that are happening in the background. So for example, if we're making a website and I send out the draft for feedback from other colleagues and other employees, well, if there's a toxic work environment, you can imagine that it's not the fault of the website and that. So that's why I really like getting referrals from my colleagues in the more foundational areas, because then I can feel good that they've taken care of the foundational needs so that by the time it gets to me, yeah, it is only about the marketing. It's not about a whole bunch of other issues. So next.
Excellent. Now, Lelia, I know you're not a career counselor, but we've had a couple of questions come in about whether or not you have any tips on how you can turn a volunteer project like this into employment. I know we have a couple of resources on our website that I'm going to pop into the chat box, but perhaps, Lelia, if you have any suggestions for people?
Yeah, you gotta aim for volunteering with the larger ones then. The smaller ones just are never, well, maybe some larger mid-sized ones, but the small ones and the small to mid-sized ones are just never going to have the financial resources to hire much more staff, like head office staff as opposed to frontline staff, because they can always get corporation money and donations for frontline staff. So it's really hard to build up their head office. So that's why you might want to start focusing on the bigger ones, the bigger well-known ones. And then, yeah, that's a great way that you get to know all the players and all the people, and then you turn a volunteer project into a job. That would be great.
Wonderful. And we've had a couple of questions come in related to what you were talking about with sitting on a board. So first of all, someone who has mentioned they are sitting on a board committee and they have some young people that are on that committee that are there to gain some volunteer experience, but they're not maybe as engaged as our participant might want them to be. How might they better engage those young people that are there primarily for volunteer experience so that they can really be an asset to the nonprofit?
Yeah, this is outside of my area of expertise. You'd have to talk to one of the governance consultants at Mass. But from what I've seen and heard them talk about, that board orientation is a huge issue. And when you were saying that, it really sounded like it's more than just that they're uncertain and early on in their career. It sounds like they're not really oriented well so that they can be confident. So, sorry.
Nope, that makes a lot of sense. That's something that we hear as well in terms of governance too. So a common problem, I think. And just another board area, a lot of board vacancies seem to have an emphasis on being a fundraiser. Do you have any sense of how much this is a requirement? If you're wanting to really work on strategy, do you need to have some foundational skills in fundraising too?
Um, no. Strategy is quite different from fundraising. But where that's coming from, the requirement to be a fundraiser and help on that one, is that more and more, if the nonprofit is going to be going for grants from foundations or government grants, there is a growing requirement that every director donate and be more heavily involved in the fundraising side. As well for small nonprofits, you know, the best way to get donations and fundraise is through connections and networking. Now, what needs to be understood is that there are many ways that a board can help with fundraising, and it's not necessarily donating their own money. They can help by, setting up meetings with their network, or they can host events, or they can find a way that they introduce the nonprofit to industry events that are within their area of expertise. So there's lots of ways that a board can open the doors of the staff fundraisers. And certainly from a fundraising versus a strategy point of view, they're completely different.
Great. And one last question for you, Lelia. If someone is already working at a nonprofit, that's their day job, and they want to do some skilled volunteering in order to gain some new skills, do you have any tips on how they can avoid a conflict of interest, or is that something you've ever seen come up in your experience?
No, I've never seen that. Great question. Really
I know, right? We've got some good questions here today. Great. So that's not something that you've seen happen, hasn't been an issue in your experience?
My guess is it would really only be an issue on the fundraising side, and where are your loyalties. But I can't see how it would be a conflict on HR or strategy or governance.
Yeah, probably something you'd want to run by the management team
Yeah.
at your day job. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for someone who hasn't maybe found volunteer positions in the past to be overly fulfilling because they're maybe had low expectations or something like that, do you have any tips for making the most of your volunteer opportunity, or how to take on a little bit more responsibility if it's not being offered to you?
Well, be really clear about what you want to get out of it. Maybe you weren't clear, like that you want to build your resume or you want to have something like that. The other thing is you just keep on trying and try another one and try another one, because again, there's so much confusion within a nonprofit that they got a lot of things on their plates, so maybe it's just not the right time and the right place. So find another nonprofit that'll need you. There's so many out there that really need professional volunteers, so don't give up.
Great. That's an important one, and I think a good place to end our session today. Don't give up. Keep at it, and there's lots of nonprofits out there that need your help. So I want to thank you again, Lilia. This was a really great presentation. And before we sign off, I want to remind all of our participants today, we're going to follow up with you by email with the webinar recording and the presentation slides. That will probably come to you later today or early tomorrow. We'll also include a link for a very short survey. So if you could just take 5 minutes to fill that out, it helps us in refining our webinar content and our delivery going forward. And you're going to have an opportunity there to let us know if there's any topics you want to see covered in a future session. So I want to thank you all again for joining us today, and I hope you have a very wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.